In case you missed it, earlier this week, Parks and Wildlife Tasmania were dumb enough to publicly highlight to all their blatant discrimination against Levi Triffett and myself. It came after they shared that they'll be hosting a 1-month-long exhibition down at the Lake Sinclair Visitor Centre for well-known wilderness photographer Grant Dixon. Now, Grant Dixon specialises in off-track and remote expeditions around Tasmania and has explored and taken many photographs over many decades. Now, they'll be selling his prints, and I'm sure they'll be taking a cut, and they'll also be selling his new coffee table book. I believe it's called Wild Light. Now, naturally I was taken away by this because Grant was one of the first photographers that I reached out to when Parks and Wildlife investigated myself and Levi Triffett over filming in their reserves without having a business license. I said, Grant, how do you do it? How do you get a business license and lock in the dates when we don't know what the weather will be like? And he said, well, I've never even heard of a business license. And not only that, he said that Parks have always been very unclear about the rules for photographers, which is exactly true. If you go onto Parks' website, even to this day, it still says that the only photographers who need a license are those using them for commercials. But that's not what the Management Act 2002 Regulation 38 entails. Regulation 38 entails that a person who is not the holder of a business license must not, in reserve land that is also Crown land, take or cause to be taken any photograph or cine, video, movie or television film for or with a view to any monetary or other consideration. This is the outdated regulation that Parks and Wildlife inflicted on Levi Triffett and myself 4 months ago, whilst ignoring hundreds, if not thousands, of other users who have been breaking the exact same law for many decades. As of today, early December, Parks and Wildlife Service have yet to acknowledge that Levi Triffett and myself have been discriminated against unfairly. Instead, they decided to double down. The following day after promoting Grant's off-track expeditions, Parks and Wildlife made an embarrassing mistake by addressing the issue in a public announcement, which was an absolute shambles for the department as the public hammered them, rightly so I might add, for blatant hypocrisy and an overreach of power. Hundreds of comments condemned the action by the Parks and Wildlife's upper management, and I could not personally find even a single comment made that defended the action by this government organisation. And I might just add, the only people who are in defence of Parks and Wildlife Service are the uninformed and the entitled. And anybody who's followed this case and sees the facts can clearly see that they've targeted Levi Triffett and myself and tried to push a way over restrictive, personalised licence to stop us doing what we do. In their post online, Parks and Wildlife spends 4 paragraphs trying to justify their actions against us before finally finishing on the age-old line of, "We have started a review of the commercial filming permit process to ensure it better reflects not only traditional forms of commercial filming, but also accounts for contemporary operators, such as online creators." But didn't you already spend 4 months working on a way over restrictive license, Parks? Isn't that what this crock of crap was about, that you couldn't even sign the date correctly? 7th of December 2022. I might just add, I am happy to say that on Levi's contract, they managed to get the date right. Congratulations, Parks, what a hurdle. Now, they must have thought they were really funny when they drafted up this business license for Levi Triffett and myself. I mean, the rule about us not being able to go off any form track without forfeiting the license is just insane when you see how many newlyweds they allow to trample all over the Cradle Mountain area. Every single year there's thousands of people doing it and they have no issue with it at all. Commentary by many well-known Tasmanian photographers shows they clearly don't understand the Regulation 38, with many trying to justify that there's no issue selling coffee table books or selling prints from your travels in the reserves. Others selfishly stating they fear all this public uproar will cause Parks and Wildlife to police photographers more, and those without licenses will start receiving fines. Let me just say, I don't believe that any photographer should need a license to take photographs in the reserves that Crown manage. And the exact same thing goes for YouTubers. Instagrammers, it doesn't matter. If the general public doesn't need permission to take photos or video, then neither should those who in a respectful way are able to monetize in some small way after their travels. Doesn't matter whether a YouTuber, an Instagrammer, all of us are held to the highest level of good behavior and public scrutiny by our followers, and that is more than enough to ensure that we're well behaved, follow good principles whilst in the parks, and that should be all that parks need. It's very simple. If they just make it easy to buy a digital pass the exact same way that you'd buy an overland track ticket, for example, there's no screening process for that, is there? I'm sure you get a lot of bad eggs that walk on that place and leave litter and take turds wherever they want. There's no screening process for that, is there? So why should there be a screening process for Instagrammers, YouTubers, photographers? We are the role models that are showing people how to use these reserves respectfully, and you need to remember that, parks. So following this shameful act by Parks and Wildlife, pretty much every media outlet reported on it. We had the ABC, the Mercury, the Advocate. Levi did a couple of radio interviews. I did some as well. And it was so overwhelming, the amount of public support that we have now that this case has finally started to build up in gears and the hypocrisy is showing clearly. So thank you to everybody who's come on board and realizes what's happening now. It's so good that you understand and you follow the case clearly and you know the details, because the more public we can get on board with this, the higher chance we have of change. Now, your opinion on this matter is needed now more than ever before. The way that Levi and I first handled this and have handled it the whole way was working from the bottom up, and that just hasn't worked. We need to email the Secretary of Parks and Wildlife, Jason Jacoby, let him know that we're not happy with the misconduct of what's happening in the people below him, and he can take accountability and work it out from there. The more we let him know about the misconduct that's happened, the greater chance we have of a good outcome for Levi and myself. I personally believe that they owe us an apology for discrimination, but I'm not going to wait for that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, guys, take care.